The Situation Room was silent, the kind of silence that settles in when the stakes are suddenly, unexpectedly raised. The air was thick with disbelief, as if everyone in the room was waiting for someone else to break the tension, to say it was all a misunderstanding. The National Security Advisor stared at the secure video feed, where the Canadian ambassador wore a polite, knowing smile, a smile that suggested this moment had been carefully planned. The news had come not through secret channels or backdoor diplomacy, but in a bold, public press release from Ottawa, broadcast live for the world to see. Canada had just declared economic independence with a move no one in Washington saw coming, a move that would ripple through every sector of the U.S. economy. The Secretary of Commerce broke the silence, voice tight with frustration. They can't just do that. There are decades of agreements, treaties, understandings. But everyone in the room knew the truth. Canada had found a legal, strategic loophole, using the very trade rules the U.S. had once championed as a model for the world. It was a bureaucratic coup, executed not with soldiers or tanks but with shipping manifests, digital signatures, and a mountain of paperwork. America had been watching the world, eyes fixed on distant threats, but never thought to look north, never imagined its closest ally would make such a bold move. A junior analyst barely out of grad school spoke up. "Sir, they're calling it the Arctic Loop Initiative." The name sounded harmless, almost technical, but the implications were massive. Billions in trade were at stake, and thousands of jobs on both sides of the border were being rerouted overnight, with Canadian industries suddenly at the center of a new economic map. The flow of commerce, steady and predictable for a century, was suddenly diverted, railways, highways, and shipping lanes all redrawn in a matter of hours. The U.S. had been outmaneuvered by its closest friend, a partner it had always assumed would play by the old rules. The president finally asked, voice heavy with concern, "How did we miss this? How did we not see it coming?" The answer was uncomfortable, almost painful. Complacency. Years of assuming the status quo would hold, that Canada would never act alone. They'd seen Canada as a junior partner, a reliable neighbor, forgetting it had its own ambitions, its own interests, and the capability to act decisively. The call from Ottawa was a wake-up. Power in the 21st century isn't just about armies or weapons, but about who controls the flow of everything. Goods, data, energy, and ideas. Not armies but logistics. The U.S. had underestimated its neighbor, failing to see the quiet strength and strategic vision developing just across the border. Now, the game had changed. The board was reset, and the old strategies no longer applied. The room understood, in that moment, that the world had shifted beneath their feet, and they'd been caught off guard by the very partner they thought they knew best. The Arctic Loop was just the beginning, a signal that the future would be written by those bold enough to seize it. So what did Canada actually do? Let's break it down in the simplest way possible. Canada built something revolutionary, a brand new shipping route called the Arctic Loop. This wasn't just any route, it was designed to be faster, more efficient, and much cheaper than the old ways of moving goods across continents. For decades, if you wanted to get goods from Asia to North America, you had to send them through the jam-packed ports on the US West Coast. After that, everything crawled across the continent by rail and truck, often getting stuck in traffic jams and bottlenecks. The process was slow, costly, and honestly, it hadn't changed much in years. It was a system begging for an upgrade. Canada's answer? Build a deepwater port at Tuktoyaktuk, right on the edge of the Arctic Ocean, and connect it directly to Asia using the legendary Northwest Passage, a route that was once considered impossible for regular shipping. Thanks to new powerful icebreakers and the reality of warming Arctic seas, this route finally became a real option. The ice that once blocked ships for most of the year was now opening up, creating a new highway across the top of the world. From Tuktoyaktuk, Canada built a high-speed rail line, partnering with European engineers and investors to move goods south at record speeds. This wasn't just a regular railway, it was designed for efficiency and speed, even in harsh winter conditions. The result? The Arctic Loop was thousands of miles shorter than traditional routes, saving days of travel time. And every step was fully legal, operating within international rules. To make it even more attractive, Canada declared the port and rail line a special economic zone. That meant lower taxes, faster customs, and a commitment to green energy. Wind turbines and solar panels powered the entire operation. Shipping companies from around the world rushed to take advantage of this new, streamlined option. Suddenly, the Arctic Loop was the hottest ticket in global trade. The United States wasn't excluded, but for the first time, it faced a direct competitor on its own doorstep. A competitor with a faster, cleaner, and more modern system. The Arctic Loop wasn't just a port and a railway, it was a fully automated, AI-managed, clean energy supply chain, using the latest technology to keep everything running smoothly and efficiently. The impact was huge, costs dropped, carbon emissions plummeted, and Canada suddenly became the new gateway for goods entering North America. Canada didn't just follow the old rules, they rewrote the playbook, setting a new standard for how global trade could work in the 21st century. The Arctic Loop became a smarter, cleaner, and more efficient highway for global trade, connecting continents in ways that were never possible before. And the best part? Canada pulled it off right under America's nose. The world watched and took notice of this bold new move. Canada's motivation was simple: vulnerability. For decades, the country's economic fortunes were closely tied to its powerful southern neighbor, the United States. This relationship brought stability in prosperous times, but it also left Canada exposed whenever tensions or downturns hit the U.S. economy. For generations, Canada's industries and jobs depended on cross-border trade. This reliance was a comfort when relations were smooth, but it became a glaring risk during periods of political or economic friction. Trade disputes, sudden tariffs, and shifting U.S. policies made it clear Canada needed to chart its own course. The country realized it could no longer afford to be at the mercy of decisions made in Washington. Then the Arctic's melting ice presented a rare and unexpected opportunity. As climate change opened up new northern passages, the region became a frontier for trade, resources, and influence. While other nations watched and waited, Canada took bold action, asserting its sovereignty not just by patrolling the Arctic, but by investing in infrastructure and development. The Arctic Loop was more than a railway, it was a declaration. Canada was saying, "This is our territory and we'll shape its destiny." This move was about more than economics. It was about national pride, ambition, and finally stepping out of America's long shadow to forge a new identity. Just as the Canadian Pacific Railway once united the nation, the Arctic Loop became a modern, nation-building project, one designed for a new era of global competition. With the world's economic center shifting rapidly toward Asia, Canada saw the chance to create a direct bridge to new markets, bypassing old limitations. The traditional Atlantic routes, once vital, were now outdated and unable to keep pace with global change. The Arctic Loop physically and economically reoriented Canada toward the Pacific, opening up new possibilities for trade and growth. It was a strategic bet on the future, a bold gamble that required vision, unity, and significant investment. Canada went all in, determined to lead rather than follow. The goals were clear: independence from old dependencies, innovation in harsh environments, and a new, more influential role on the world stage. The Arctic Loop was Canada's boldest move yet, a symbol of resilience, ambition, and a future defined on its own terms. The Arctic Loop's biggest winners? Canada's North and Prairie provinces. Isolated towns became global trade hubs, sparking jobs in construction, logistics, and tech. The new rail spine rebalanced the economy, spreading opportunity beyond the big cities. Farmers and manufacturers now reach Asian markets faster and cheaper, making Canadian goods more competitive. Lower shipping costs mean lower prices for consumers, more money in Canadian pockets. International companies must now work with Canada, bringing in investment and talent. Canada shifts from resource exporter to logistics powerhouse. The Arctic Loop boosts sovereignty, innovation, and global influence. It's a long-term investment in prosperity for all Canadians. Canada's Arctic Loop is part of a global trend-smart, mid-sized nations using strategy to punch above their weight. Singapore became a global hub by leveraging its location and efficiency. The Netherlands turned Rotterdam into Europe's indispensable port through technology and logistics. The UAE transformed Dubai into a crossroads for air and sea trade. Canada's move is similar, using its Arctic geography to become a critical trade node. But Canada's style is different, quiet, pragmatic, and businesslike. No bluster, just a better solution. By framing the Arctic Loop as a win-win, Canada made it hard for others to object. In the modern world, controlling the flow of goods is power. Canada simply built a better mousetrap, and the world is lining up. This isn't the first time Canada has surprised the US with a bold economic move. The 1854 Reciprocity Treaty reoriented trade southward, catching London and Washington off guard. In 1911, Canadian voters rejected free trade with the US to protect their independence. The 1988 Free Trade Agreement shocked many Canadians, overturning decades of economic nationalism. Each time, a sense of vulnerability or opportunity drove dramatic change. The US-Canada relationship looks stable, but history shows it can shift overnight. The Arctic Loop is the latest chapter, a reminder that even close allies have their own interests. Canada can chart its own course when it matters most. Strategic surprises are part of the story. The game is never as settled as it seems. The spirit behind the Arctic Loop echoes the story of the Avro Arrow. In the 1950s, Canada built the world's most advanced jet, then scrapped it under US pressure. The loss haunted Canada, symbolizing stifled ambition and lost sovereignty. The Arctic Loop is a response, this time Canada led, funded and built on its own terms. It's a redemption, leveraging Canadian strengths in geography, engineering and governance. The project proves Canada won't let its potential be grounded again. The blueprints won't be destroyed. The lesson: Canada can lead and will. The Arctic Loop is proof. The US must stop taking allies for granted. The Arctic Loop proves partners have their own ambitions and strategies. Power now includes controlling supply chains, not just armies. America's infrastructure is aging while Canada built the future. The US needs to pay closer attention to allies' economic moves, anticipate, not just react. The smart response isn't threats but competition. Invest in ports, streamline logistics, innovate. The world is full of ambitious nations making bold moves. Humility and adaptation are key. Acknowledge Canada's smart play and use it as motivation. The next move is America's to make. For Canada, the Arctic Loop proves boldness pays off. It's time to embrace ambition and seek the next big opportunity. Economic sovereignty is an ongoing process. Canada must keep diversifying partnerships. The US will respond, so Canada must be ready for both challenges and opportunities. The benefits must reach all Canadians, especially northern and Indigenous communities. True success is measured by improved lives, not just profits. The Arctic Loop's use of AI and clean energy is a model for future projects. Canada can lead in green tech and ethical innovation. The Arctic Loop isn't the end, it's the start of a new era. Quiet confidence, innovation, and leadership will define Canada's future.